Well, we actually initially got in contact through the Jack Bannon competition for his new song. And how did you find Jack Bannon? Like, how did you find the competition?
Um, it's kind of funny because the whole competition actually stemmed from me making the video with his song. And so I had made it was just okay, it's this crazy story. So I was just on Instagram one day and I just happened to be like I had followed him for a little bit on Instagram and I was watching like one of his live videos. I had literally just randomly tuned in and Jack was talking about something to the effect of like you need to be making stuff, every single day, and like it doesn't matter any type of stipulations, any type of no reasoning, but you need just to be making stuff. And I remember it inspired me to literally that day just go make a video. And so I made this video with his song because it had just came out, and I just sort of put together some random video that I thought was cool, and I just DM'd him it, and he hit me back and was like, "Yo, this is fire," and that kind of just sparked the relationship between us. And ever since then, we just like talked, and then after about a week after I posted that video, and he sort of saw it, he was like, "Hey, um, should I do a contest with my song?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And so literally right after that, that whole competition started, and it was such a cool thing to be able to watch, all the submissions come in and stuff. And Jack's just such a talented guy where he would attract those crazy creatives to his platform. But it was kind of an interesting full circle moment where, you know, I got to meet him and build that relationship. And now he kind of in a way I think he inspired me a little bit to come to LA because I think I was on the fence about it. And after meeting him I sort of got a little bit more confidence in being able to do that. And so that's sort of how I met him. And then through him, um me and you made a link up, and ever since then it's just been
Yeah.
you know
Well, he's such a talented guy, but on top of that, like he's so like giving and nice. Where I'm like, holy shit! Like I'm surprised he even replies to some of my DMs. Or I'm sure you were surprised when you sent him his your video with his song. You're like, wait, this guy's replying to me. Holy shit! And he
yeah,
actually
totally.
gives honest feedback, and I'm like, this is a not just a talented guy, but a nice guy. And then well, obviously I applied to the competition. I was a runner up, and from the runner ups and guys who had really good videos, he made that group chat. That's how we met. And like like at the beginning he was so active. Now it's kind of not as necessarily active, but like the community he's building, I think is great as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you know, going off of what you said, I think, yeah, Jack's the type of guy where he doesn't necessarily have an agenda, but he just cares about, checking in on people, and he cares about, I think, the creative community as a whole, and just, yeah, he's just such a talented guy, and nothing but good things to say about him, honestly. So,
But before you moved to LA, you're Minnesota, right? That's where you're from.
yep, I'm from Minnesota.
And you were working with what was the university?
So it was the University of Minnesota Duluth. So this small little town, right off of Lake Superior, northern Minnesota. So I so I went to college. I graduated high school in 2018, and then I went to college there. And I didn't necessarily know I wanted to film football, but I sort of had an idea about it. And I remember getting there, and my whole thing was like, I just want to make videos no matter what. And I remember just emailing people, trying to find someone to get me an opportunity. And I even just went there on a whim and just sort of like started filming stuff and trying to build like connections and stuff. And eventually I got, in touch with the football program, and they offered me a job there. And then the second season, my sophomore year, I was able to actually work for the football team, and I completely like reconstructed their Instagram profile, and sort of like built out their video content, which at the time and kind of still now they don't really have the budget or the people to you know, they do their best to put out stuff, but there wasn't really someone who knew how to video edit, knew how to like put out social content in a creative and engaging way. And so I was able to sort of learn a lot, you know, about, you know, managing an account, like posting short form content and just developing like the brand, I guess, for the football team as a whole. And it was a very enlightening experience because it taught me a lot about, you know, what I can do personally as like a video editor and as a creator. And it taught me a ton about, you know, putting out content and being consistent with stuff, because that was sort of the name of the game, was just getting stuff out consistently and being that, you know, catalyst for the team. So
What bridged
yeah.
that gap though from like you just doing it for fun, for free, just watching the games, filming, to like let's like we're gonna pay you or bring you on as the full time guy or give you credits, whatever their right
Well,
their
I
deal
had
is.
always been sort of into video up until I was probably about 10 years old. And I've probably been video editing now for about 10 years. Um, and I think, you know, I would make short form videos. And when I was in high school, I would make whatever videos with my friends and just make as much stuff as I could, because that was sort of my hobby and what I love to do. And I never really looked at it as, you know, something that I was like, all right, this is what I'm gonna pursue. I was more of like, this is kind of a side gig that I could do, and it's super cool, but you know, I'm gonna do like a normal job, I guess. And so when I got into college, I, you know, just wanted to continue to pursue that. And I think being persistent and just being relentless in what you want. I just emailed everybody that I could in the department and just kept building relationships and kept, um, you know, and a lot of people talk about this in the industry is like your network is your net worth. And it's 100% true, because in the creative industry, it's very much so about who you know. And it's very much so about having relationships that will put you in those positions to be able to have those opportunities to film football, to be on set, to be making, you know, cool videos or cool content, whatever it might have you. So I think, you know, the relentlessness and just pursuing something that I wanted was, you know, the catalyst for me personally. So
I just want to stay here for a sec. I'm always interested, like me and Will are both guys that kind of stumbled into this as well. I would like you to talk just quickly about making the transition from kind of making a video here and there with the football team to like you brought up earlier this theme of consistency. And I think if you really want to build an account, whether it's for a sports team or it's for a brand, like consistency is kind of one of those things that you have to check off. So maybe talk about kind of like where it started with building those relationships to like really focusing on building the account and going from kind of being an amateur to taking it a little bit more seriously.
right. So I guess no one in the department really knew how social worked in that way. Like they were posting on Twitter and they were being, you know, they were doing their best to post content, but no one really knew how to like develop an account and how to like post stuff that would actually get serious engagement. And I guess just me being on social media for a while, I sort of had, and having a creative mindset with it and knowing sort of, I think a lot of it too is like taste. You know, you can make something, but you got to have a good taste about it. And I sort of was able to take what they had, which wasn't really much at the time, and sort of just build out content. And I sort of just, it was a lot of just like developing stuff on the fly. Like I would go to the games every week and I would film, you know, I'd film entirely the game. And then I would look at it and say, all right, how do I not only make, you know, one video out of this, but how do I stretch this beyond um, into more content? So I would, you know, put out single clips of plays. I would put out, you know, photos that I would coordinate with a photographer with. I would just put out as much content really as possible. And I think at the end of the day, you know, people's attention span is this much, and being able to stretch that into something larger was helped contribute to the growth. And a lot of people in the Duluth area and just in general, the Duluth football team is it's D2, so it's not as large as, you know, a D1 football program might be, where they have the entire staff. Like if you look at Alabama or Clemson's a great example because they have an entire creative team dedicated solely to their Instagram and Twitter feeds. So I think being able to just put out content, period, was huge for them. And I think it was able to help grow the program and help like gain exposure for, you know, the players in the program as a whole. So, you know, going back to answering your question, I think the consistency piece is very much so what the social game is about, because of that attention span and because of, you know, you just got to show, you have stuff to show for.
Like you were talking about like relationships and the network is your net worth. When I was looking at some of the comments on your videos from the football games and whatnot, like I saw like players like, oh, this is sick, this is lit, like I love it. Like how important was it to like become buddies with some of the players or the staff to like create content that's not just like cool, you know, brand building for the school, but rather like giving a reason for kids to watch and interact because you're building like a community for like the players.
Right. Like it was super important. And I think I had mentioned this, but not a lot of, you know, at the D2 level, at the D3 level, you don't see a lot of like great videos or great, that's actually not true. You just don't, at this specific program, you just didn't see a lot of like good content being put out. So for someone to come in and like completely like reconstruct the social platforms like Instagram, Twitter, it was just kind of a cool thing. And to answer your question, you know, I think definitely building relationships was a huge piece, and I was able to build a relationship with the running back coach, who at the time was, you know, he sort of managed the social media space, and he and I sort of tag teams, and we were able to bring on more people to help with, you know, whether it be graphics or whether it be, you know, other specialized content. But building the relationships was key, and especially when you're in those intimate situations, like if you can imagine being in the locker room with these guys, and you know, you kind of got to know these people to like know the do's and don'ts of you know, filming them, because you don't want to be in a guy's face when he's like trying to be prepared for a game, or
Exactly.
maybe a coach is having a conversation that doesn't necessarily need to be filmed or be captured. And it's sort of like an instinctual thing where you get to know these people and you get to know their tendencies. Like a lot of different guys, you know, would love to be on camera, and, you know, you'd film them and they just love it. And some guys are just, you know, quiet and they don't really necessarily want to be on camera. So, you know, being able to know these guys was definitely a crucial piece. And like anything, it's just building relationships. And I was able to go in, build one relationship, and then, you know, I was introduced to another person, or I was introduced to someone else, and you know, slowly just build the relationship based off of there.
And do you ever find that you learned maybe the hard way, where you maybe didn't realize, pick up on that situation? Like, do you have a story where maybe you got in someone's face a little bit too early before the game, or sorry, too close before the game starts? Like, any stories there?
Honestly, not really. I just kind of like felt like I knew. I feel like I had good boundaries with it. Like I never overstepped to the point of like someone was like, "Yo, get out of my face." Um, but there definitely was moments where they would just tell me to kind of just like piss off or something.
Get the fuck out of here.
Just get out of here.
I'm trying to focus.
There is definitely those moments, but I think I had good boundaries, and I think from an early standpoint, I knew, you know, about what I was sort of talking about, where you just kind of feel out the situation. Like, do you really need to film this, or does this really need to be like, and I think that was over time I learned, and I continually learned to gauge those situations. Like I wasn't right off the gun, like knew all the information, but over time I was able to sort of learn the tendencies of people, sort of learn, you know, how people react to different situations, camera in their face. Cause it is like kind of something where if someone sees a camera, as much as you could say you don't act different, you in a way you do act different. So yeah, it was definitely, I don't know if I would say I had one of those situations I could recall upon right now, but there was that definitely happened at some point for sure.
You never got shouted down by a coach?
No, I haven't.
Come
Has that happened to
on.
you, Will?
No, but like I've been like trying to go in a dress, like I do a lot of hockey, so trying to go in
Mhm.
the dressing room or whatnot, and then like you just get a look. Like, did you ever work in hockey? Like, do you know many hockey guys
No, I didn't.
in the culture?
Well, I did film hockey a little bit, but I didn't really get too much into it just because the program was sort of on its own with stuff.
Yeah.
So I never really got too much into hockey.
Well, coaches are pretty intense and like scary dudes. Like they're not the nicest bunch of guys, I would say.
Yeah, no, they're not.
A lot of yelling at players and stuff. So I mean, I would go in like the dressing room trying to film stuff, and they give me a look. They're like, nah, like get out of here. You know, like
You just know at that point.
You just know you can't go in.
they're quiet.
That's a no.
They're pretty quiet people. They won't yell, but it's like they give you those scary looks. So I don't really have anything that bad. I mean, we did mic up a coach one time. Oh no, the miking up's the scary part because I don't know, in the NHL, I don't know if you heard, there was a lot of coaching controversy last year. I think in 2019 with some like racist stuff and like player abuse stuff. And when that was going on, we were like miking up this coach, and like he would say some kind of things that you probably don't want the parents hearing on the team.
Right.
And he's just like, yeah, we're probably not going to use much of this mic'd up. Like, I don't want to get fired. Like, we're going to stick with just the game footage. So that's about the extent of my issues. But Mose, you were going to say something.
It was so just on that, I was always the guy that would look at like the stick guy or the manager because I thought they were always a good gauge. If they were in a good mood, I'd be like, can we?
But those
go
guys
there,
are always
or
in
is
a
it
good
bad
mood.
time?
They're always in a good mood. I've never seen
because the coaches usually, I think the default for coaches is no. Like, just get out of the locker room. We're trying to be focused here. So
Right.
I'd try to scaffold.
Right.
My question, though, I want to go back to right when you joined UMD and you started work with them. Right, you said it was a very small team. So one of the things that you would do is that you'd take a piece of content and then try to stretch as much value out of it as you could. One of the things that me and Will talk about a lot is that oftentimes it's these clips that you don't edit at all that sometimes do the best. So
Right.
It's
in
so
terms
annoying.
of a person, it's
It's
so
the
like
most
for
annoying.
videographers or designers or people who work in social, I think a lot of the time what frustrates people is that you put so much time into your craft and learning like really how to make a video that not only looks good but performs as well, and then you have this clip where you just kind of take it out of all these clips that you've shot or a photograph, and that's the piece of content that really pops off. So
Right.
how do you kind of balance those things where you strike me as a guy who obviously cares a lot about your craft, but you can also realize that the consistency and kind of the unedited raw content
Right.
sometimes performs better. So how do you square those two things away?
That's actually interesting that you said that because, going back to, the Instagram account, one of the best performing videos that was on that Instagram account was I believe it was a 30-second clip of just a huge hit. And I remember just putting it out and I was like, it took me about 15 minutes to edit. I put like a cool song to it and it just outperformed anything that I had put multiple hours in. And I know exactly where you're coming from, because, it's hard because I think in this industry, especially, nothing is really guaranteed. And, you could put 15 hours into a video or you could put that 25 hours into a video, but unless the response is elicited by the audience, you might not see the returns that you necessarily want. And sometimes, people who watch content like this don't necessarily understand that. And those 10-second, the one-off photos that you do take, just happen to perform way better. And I think, going back to answering the question, I think it definitely has to be you walking the line of like, do I put this much amount of time into it or do I just put stuff out regardless? Because if you work on projects for extended period of times and it's only being released, once in a while, people are going to lose their attention span for, that specific content. And I think there's just a certain balance between short form, like very, very short form, and like actual sought out, videos. And there, it's a great, I really like that you brought that up because, um, so for the account, I would essentially do, I do these short form clips. So if there was a big play, I would just put out the raw footage of that. And then at the end of the week, I would make an entire recap of, that game or what have you. So I think for me, it was just being able to identify that, short form stuff might do better. But you need to sort of have that balance, and that's a tough part about being creative, is that you don't necessarily know what's going to pop. And some stuff you have every reservation in the world about it being, the video or the photo that's going to, make something happen for you. But you may post something else, and that's the one thing that does it. So it's an interesting thing, and it's kind of, you just got to be consistent. I think, going back to it, consistency is huge, especially for any creative, for sure.
And so you were mainly doing sports and whatnot, and then I see like when I was stalking your Instagram and website, you started transitioning to like hip hop, and I saw the G-Force 5 video, which I loved, the car video you did. Like, did you always want to get out of sport? Like, what was that journey changing from like genres of
Right.
video?
I think in a way I'm still in that transition for sure. I'm trying to sort of find what I exactly want to do, and I think coming to LA was sort of um, this call to sort of find that. And for me, I guess music is definitely like a space I can see myself in. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, I want to do commercial stuff, short film work, music as well. And rather than just doing music videos, um, I want to be someone who is very versed in different kinds of, filmmaking. And I think the transition went from this sort of short form content type of guy where I was producing, recaps of games or, what have you with the football team, to now it's like full produced videos with, storylines, and there's like a ton of substance to these videos. And that transition sort of happened this summer. And for me, this summer was my first time freelancing. So I decided that this was sort of a new path that I wanted to pursue. And at the time I was in college, so I wasn't necessarily getting paid, the world by the football team. And it never was really about the money, but for me, I just wanted to raise my ceiling and do bigger and better things for sure. So I think being able to step out of what I was comfortable in and sort of step into a new foreign space was something that I really wanted for myself. And I'm still searching for that to this day. And I think it'll be continual pursuit, honestly. But that's sort of, and the transition, it's very much so blurry because, this industry as a whole is very, you don't really understand it till you sort of get into it and you sort of like start networking with people, and you start to have conversations, and you start to actually do the work. Because to me, I've always thought of this, but the filmmaking industry is like one of the most secretive industries that there is. Like, even short of, YouTube videos nowadays and stuff, where you can find tutorials, but a lot of the information that you get is going out and actually doing it and having those experiences, and failing at something or taking a chance on something. So I think the transition has been very gradual, but I'm sort of happy where it's heading. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. I want to stay there just a little bit longer. So I started with sport design, and I've mentored a lot of people who are kind of in that industry. And one of the most common things that I see kind of coming out of it is there's a lot of kind of techniques and transitions and little things that you can do in sports that might not work as well if you were shooting a music video. So did
Right.
you kind of come along some of those things and those roadblocks where maybe you loved a certain transition or a way that you set up a video in sports that didn't work in music videos, and then kind of how did you navigate that?
Well, I guess, I think video as a whole translates. There's just certain components to editing, whether it be editing or filmmaking as a whole, that translate. You have to tell a story. You have to make it appealing to the audience visually. And I think, although there's completely different forms of content, I think at the end of the day, at a rudimentary level, video editing is similar in that you're going to utilize the same software. You're going to be, in the same position. How do I make this engaging to someone who might not know anything about the video? And it definitely was like a different approach, because music videos are way more thought out, and they're very much story based, whereas sport content, and I guess that whole realm, is very much you document what happens and then you predicate your story based off of that. And music video, and I guess the commercial space, is all right, let's develop a story and now let's tell that in a certain way. And I think the two are they're just different. They're different forms of filmmaking in general, and you just get the different experiences with the two. So I think, at the end of the day, it was, a definite transition, but I think overall my love for filmmaking translated because I was, adapt to learning and being a student of the game. And I think that's ultimately, something that you should always focus on, is being a student, no matter what, no matter what point you're at in your filmmaking career, whether you're working with the top tier people in the industry or you're at the bottom. Like, you should always be trying to learn and improve as a creative, because that's ultimately what it's about, is just being better every single day. So yeah, that transition definitely was different for me, but I think, if you're open to change and you're open to learning new things, I think it's a very easy transition. And then, there's caveats to everything. And it's definitely a different, like, the music industry space is definitely a different, navigation than sports, but
Totally different people too.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, what's that like? I don't have no idea what it's like. I'm sure it's a bit like, is it less stable? Because
It's
everyone's
definitely
kind of
less stable.
fighting.
You sort of don't know. And I'm talking from the point of, like, I'm just starting this.
But
And
also, just to clarify, like, I'm not necessarily just talking about money. Like, I'm just talking
right.
about, like, lifestyle. Like, everyone,
Right.
it's a little bit more all over the place rather than this, like, regimented, like, practices
Right.
Wednesdays. Like, this is like a structure. It, from what I gather from what, like, LA entertainment's like, it's kind of just like the Wild West.
Right. It 100% is the Wild West, because you don't necessarily know, unless you're like this huge, like, music video producer, huge music video, right? You don't necessarily know where your next project's going to come from until it sort of hits. And it's a lot of just, like, it's very, like, I'm going back to the relationship piece, because if you know a lot of people who are having those opportunities to shoot videos, like, there's this weird thing about LA where, like, everyone's sort of intertwined and everyone sort of knows everyone, and projects sort of will either get just tossed around or they'll end up, in another guy's arms. And I think being able to build relationships and have the opportunity to be in the room to have conversations with, oh, maybe we should, like, do this video, or maybe we should, let's do this. And being in the room, you have that opportunity to, oh, I can actually do that, or I can, edit that video, or I can direct that video. And it's very much network based and very much sporadic, I guess you could say, because projects just come and go and it's not steady at all. Like, there's no part of filmmaking, I think, and trying to be a freelancer, is steady. There is certain opportunities that are steady, but overall it's a very sporadic, very take it as you come thing, which some people don't like handling, but some people live and die by it. And
I feel like it's more exciting. Like
Right. It is. It
it's
is.
this thrill. Like you wake up and you're like, okay, I'm going to this production meeting. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like they might just
Right.
completely change location or change their idea, right?
Right. You sort of just, it's just, it is what it is. It really just comes as it comes. And in some months, maybe you have no projects. In some months, you have 5 that you can't handle at all. Um, you know, my last month, or I guess couple months ago in August, I had 5 different projects that I was working on at once. And it was sort of this period where I was just every single day was like working, 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 working. And, the next month I only had 1 project. And, it's just the difference between, something that's maybe more stable in terms of the, the sport content space where you're, all right, well, like you said, Will, is all right, Wednesday we got practice. I know I'm gonna get, video of that, and then Thursday we got or Friday we got the game, and I know I'm gonna get content of that. It's a different beast, and I think you don't really like fully understand it or get a grip of it till you sort of start to be in the industry and you start to make connections. You start to just try experiment things, and the thing about it too is there's no clear cut path to anything, especially in the filmmaking and entertainment business. There's no one, this is how you get to success. And I think it's just experimenting and carving your own path, whatever that looks like. Um, whether it's, music videos, or whether it's commercial work, or whether it's you're a DP, or you're, directing, or maybe you're a colorist. Like there's just so many outlets um, to be your own, person. And I think it's definitely a very sporadic industry as a whole.
Right. And you went to LA. Did you have a connection there? Like what sent you over the fence to, I'm gonna jump in to take this a leap of faith to go to LA?
So I had gone to college for 2 years at UMD, and you know there's about 3 things that sort of like set me on my path, I guess you could say. And I remember, the winter break of my sophomore year, I went home. I live in like the Minneapolis area, and my friend and I had a conversation, and he had recently left school because of personal reasons, and he's not the biggest guy on university at all. And we had a good conversation, and that sort of at that moment sparked the interest for me of like, yeah, maybe I can leave school and do this full time, because I think at that point in my life I was very much so dead set on video as like my career and everything. And for me, school wasn't sort of fitting that mold. And so that conversation was had, and then fast forward a couple months, and I've continually been thinking about it. And, should I leave school? Should I stay in school? And then I met another friend of mine who's my current roommate, and he sort of again reinforced that, like, maybe school isn't for you. And I remember the day that we had the conversation, he brought it up very sporadically and was like, hey, like maybe we should move to LA. And I just was like, sure, like let's do it. Let's pull the trigger. And I guess I in that moment didn't really, commit to anything, but that sort of put the idea in my head to come to LA. And LA for me had always been a distant thing. Like what okay, I'll do it when I'm like 23, 24, 25. When I'm older out of college. And I never really, had it at the forefront till it sort of just hit me. And then I just eventually decided to leave school. And then at that point it was, all right, do I move back home, or do I move to LA and sort of pursue this like, dream I have? And I sort of continually over the summer gained much, much more confidence in myself and my abilities as I began to freelance, and I began to understand how being a freelancer and how being a creative in this industry works. And um, over time, I just gained that confidence that I needed to say, all right, this is like something that's doable. And, going back to meeting Jack, that was one of the first connections that I made to someone in LA. And that sort of, gave me the confidence to be like, this is definitely doable. This is definitely like something I could pursue. And after that, we found a place, and I kind of just said, screw it, like, let's just go. And, I've been here for like about a month now, and it's already, picking up to the point of just projects on projects. And so it's definitely one of the more pivotal points in my life of moving here, and sort of this career change, and excuse me, this career change, and sort of like pursuing something that I've always sort of dreamed about. So it's kind of like a fantasy thing where I've just been thinking about it, and yeah, like, it was sort of just, let's just go and see what happens. Like, there's no there's no harm in giving it a try. At the end of the day, if I fail, just go back home, or I pursue something different. And I think a lot of people are just afraid to take chances in life, and especially afraid to go after stuff that they like. And I always have an intense admiration for people who, do something like that. And I think there's a lot of those type of stories in LA where people just sort of move out here on a whim. And, you know, there's the typical, I moved to LA and I became a superstar, or I became a movie star. And I think that's just true to not just being in the creative industry, but pursuing any form of creative content as a whole, is just taking that first step and just trying something. So that was sort of my journey to being in LA. And I think I'm very much so still in that journey. And I'm by no means, solidified in anything. And I'm still just this kid trying to pursue this dream. So it's very much so an ongoing story that's happening right now. So
Well, who was that first connection you made with? Like, what was that first day you like landed in LAX or wherever? Like, what were you thinking?
so there is this guy I know who I recently got hired with their company, and it's sort of like I guess like a freelance position where you sort of just get this, you know, you're on with this company, but you're not necessarily, you know, like a 9 to 5 employee where you go in. It's very much project based, where I'm just sort of with the company. So if like this company gets this project, I get to go there and like I get to do my thing, whether it's editing, directing, DP work, whatever it may be. But that first connection with him sort of came from Jack, and sort of came from just honestly just networking through Instagram. Like, I think Instagram is one of the coolest tools out there right now to just meet people. And, I think more than ever, it just shows that we're having this conversation right now solely predicated on us meeting on Instagram. And, more than ever, I don't think there's a reason why people can't network and why people can't, put themselves out there. There is a way to go about it, but it's very much so just something that you continually pursue. So going back to the question, the first connection for me was someone, that was just into the industry, and it's still continually like a thing right now going on as we speak. So it's a very, very small company. It's literally myself and another one of the guys I work with, and we're sort of just working to build this production company out, and sort of just commercial work, short films, music videos, of course, anything music related, I guess. So that was sort of one of my first connections that I made there. And then through Jack, I was able to meet, various different people, whether it was introduction to people, or, me visiting here. Like, I visited here in July and hung out with Jack, and I was able to like just meet different people that he knew. And that's sort of like honestly what it's about, is just being a human being, and like being interested in what other people are doing. And
Well, do
so
you want to
that
walk
was,
us through what that was like, meeting Jack and like meeting all these people? Like, were you nervous?
yeah, I mean, definitely. Definitely. Like, I guess I didn't know Jack at all. And we had solely talked on Instagram. And I guess he was like, yo, you should come visit, or whatever the conversation was like. And I just was like, okay, sure. And my roommate was going to come out here as well. So we went together, and I came out and literally just met him that day. And we hung out that night, and I just stayed at his place and literally just kind of explored LA with him, and, stayed with him for a week. But I was definitely nervous because I had never been exposed to LA at all. I'd never been to LA, never known really anything about LA besides, the typical knowledge of movies are made there, and that's where the entertainment industry is. So I was able to meet Jack, and then Jack sort of just introduced me to a few different people, and that was sort of that allowed me to, build connections through him and just continually network. Like, you meet one person that sort of puts you on to the industry or whatever, and then you meet another person based off of them, and they know 5 more people, and then you get an opportunity with those people, and then eventually you're working with this guy who's, in this specific industry. So I've I've said this multiple times, but it's who you know, and sort of just building those relationships. And it's one of those things where you can give all the recommendations in the world, but you can't necessarily walk someone through how to, network and, I guess, build relationships and build connections, because you sort of just got to go out and like experiment and try stuff, and just put yourself out there in vulnerable situations. And there's a lot of just doing stuff solely on the predication of, all right, maybe I'll make a connection through this, or maybe I'll like, maybe I'll get an opportunity from this. And, I think there's merit to going into the situation with that mindset, but you also just have to be like a human, like I said, and just, I'm in LA, and I don't know that many people, and, I want to make friends. I want to make, build relationships with people. So I think those are, the important things that you should keep in mind for sure, when trying to build connections in LA specifically.
Are there any stories from that first time, the first night out? Like, I kind of want to. We're from Toronto, kind of like a smaller town compared to LA. Like, let us in. let us in on some juice. Come on.
Honestly, I don't know if there's that much juice to it, because we kind of just got here. I literally just drove like cross country to
you
LA.
drove? Nice.
Yeah, so I have my car here, and we just drove cross country and sort of moved in. It was one of those things where you just got like the blow up mattress, and then you got your like one item in your room.
Damn.
And I was just like, it was like that for a couple days, and then just getting stuff settled. And I don't know if I've necessarily like had those experiences yet where it's like the crazy LA moments, but
yeah,
it's definitely a different atmosphere, and I've always said this about LA when I got here, is it's a very entrepreneurial spirited place. And there's so many people who, like I said, are in that same boat of like, we kind of just moved here and we're just trying to figure it out, like me. And there's just so many people who have those, larger aspirations, and have that, go on a whim type thing. And, I haven't necessarily had one of those experiences quite yet. Just, it's been kind of mellow with the whole COVID-19 thing, but just been, adjusting to the lifestyle change, or I guess the difference in what the day-to-day looks like. So that's pretty much it.
I wanted to circle back to the production company. We talked earlier about kind of how you try to squeeze as much of the content that you did with sports, rather. Do you do any of that with the music videos and kind of the production stuff you do there, or is it just delivering the one asset right now?
It's predicated on what the client wants. If we're talking like, all right, the stipulations are we need to complete this music video. It's, obviously a lot of artists here have, people who are the creative directors, or they have people who are specifically designated to do those type of things where they make the short form content. But usually if you come in as like a production, right, you perform the one task to produce that video, and then it's sort of just done. And I guess, if that's stipulated where, okay, we want to roll this out with like an additional like snippet of this video, we want to make, a preview of this video or what have you, that's definitely something that has to be in conversation beforehand, because sort of what you agree upon is sort of what's done within, the production. So like with music videos, you come in and the producer will contact you, and the producer will say, all right, like here's all the assets, here's all the, you know, footage, what have you. And then you take that and then you coordinate with maybe the director, the producer, and then, you know, you send them the first cut. They like this, they like that, and then you send them the second cut, and so on. And it's sort of just you do your task and you're done, unless otherwise, you know, stipulated. So it's a little bit different than the short form content, like I said, with football or hockey, where you can just pull different snippets from it and sort of like expand more than just that one video. So it's definitely a different thing for sure.
For sure. And part of the reason I asked is that we talked about this in the last podcast with platforms like TikTok doing just vertical video, and then Instagram recently, you know, kind of doubling down on stories. They have reels now. I think a lot of the work that I see being in the future, at least, is doing stuff for vertical video. So have you done any vertical video yet? Is that something that you've kind of looked towards in the future? Or kind of where do you stand on
Honestly,
that?
I think vertical video is honestly awesome. You know, I'm all for, you know, filmmaking as a whole progressing, and filmmaking as a whole, um, you know, going to the point of wherever it can. And I think more now than ever, there is a demand for short form content and a demand for vertical video. Um, but you know, as the filmmaker and the, you know, the artist in me, and you had mentioned this, you know, you put a lot of time into these videos, right? You put numerous amounts of hours, numerous amounts of thought and revisions and everything, and it's sort of hard to see stuff just do that well when you know that person might have only put 5 minutes or 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
into producing that piece or whatever. And it's sort of just the name of the game, and some stuff will do way better than, you know, your stuff because of, you know, whatever factor it is. But I think vertical video as a whole is awesome. I did see, you know, I believe it was Apple produced an entirely vertical video, entirely vertical short film. So it's definitely like something that's on the horizon. Um, but you know, as we see TikTok grow and go through its, you know, ups and downs, and I think it'll manifest into something that'll be, and I think more than ever right now, it's everyone is doing vertical video, and everyone is on TikTok, and everyone is doing the short form content stuff. So I think eventually it'll be definitely way more dominant than it is right now. Um,
Well, I was gonna say, speaking about like the networks and stuff, like, and you were saying it's kind of a secretive business, and you only really know from doing. Like,
right.
are people sharing sauce much when you're in these meetings or editing rooms? Like, what's like the collaboration like in LA? Like, are people
Um,
secretive?
People like, not that people are secretive, they just don't deliberately give out information. Like, I guess like when you watch a video, if you've ever like been super curious about, you know, how did they do that? Like I'll just go frame by frame trying to like analyze it. Um, but no, I think there's definitely a secretive piece to it. I mean, not a deliberate secretive, but just like a, this is my like how I do it, and I'm not gonna let people know, because obviously there's all these tutorials out on YouTube, and there's all this information on YouTube about how to edit with Premiere, how to edit with whatever, and all to do this stuff. But I just find myself a lot of times watching videos and I'm like super confused or super interested in how they did that specific thing. And I'll try to look up how it's done, but there's just not a lot of information about how it would be done, or specifically, you know, what that process looks like. Um, but definitely when you do get in the industry, there is like definitely, I get it comes back to like building relationships. Like if you build a good relationship with someone who maybe is doing something that's like no one is doing, you know, you're obviously going to get to take a peek at that if you're, you know, in cahoots with them, or something like that. But it's definitely something that is very I wouldn't say secretive, but just unspoken.
And if you ask questions, like, are you finding yourself asking a lot of questions, or do you kind of just like try to watch and stay quiet? Because I'm sure as a new guy, you don't want to like rustle many feathers, right?
Right. No, I think my thing has always been just not rustle any feathers, but just like pick people's brain. And um, I think it doesn't hurt if you have good intentions with something. It doesn't hurt to ask questions and to be, interested in what they're doing. And I think there's this difference between trying to like copy someone and trying to learn from someone, because there's a lot of like, how did you do that? No, I'm going to take exactly how you did that and I'm going to copy it. And if you're just trying to be someone who's learning and how trying to get better, I don't think, there's any reason why not to ask questions, or why not to, you know, ask them about what their process looks like, or how do they view this, or how do you think about this, and like what exactly, you know, do you do in this scenario. And it's just a lot of people in LA too, I feel like, at least myself, and I know eventually this is something that I want to, be able to do, is just hand on information, be, a mentor to someone, because there's so much value in teaching somebody about something that you have a good grip on. And I love being able to like explain to someone like how something works, or being able to, be like, hey, actually do this because this is way more efficient than if you were to do this. And I just love filmmaking as a whole so much, to the point where I'll talk to anybody about it, and I just love being able to, just talk shop about, doing videos and stuff. So it's definitely a secretive thing, but you just have to build those relationships and sort of find the
Yeah.
information out for yourself. So
Well, if you love talking shop, let's talk about the GeForce 5 video then, because I love the sound design in it, and Mose
thank
pointed
you.
out as well. I've been trying to dabble more in that space and create more of like an atmosphere to like the work. So
Right.
like, what were you thinking going into, a car shoot? What sounds did you pick? Where did you find them? Like, can you break that down a bit?
Yeah, so that video, I went on this rally and we shot for like 3 days, or I shot for 3 days, and I sort of got back, and it was at this point I had sort of started to come to an understanding with sound design. And I think there's this sort of, a lot of people just don't know much about sound design, and they just don't understand how crucial it is and how much it can be, add to your video. And so I had just like bought, a couple packs, and Jack had actually given me this huge like 64 gigabyte sound pack.
Oh
So I
my
had
god.
just like completely stepped up my sound game, and or at least my sound assets. So, on my hard drive, I just have all these different, whether it's Foley, whether it's like atmospheres, crunches, clicks, whooshes. I just had all these different, sounds to work with. And my whole goal was to just develop, something that would take the visuals to an entirely new level. And I didn't necessarily have a game plan. My sound design process is, I just bring in a sound and then I work from there. So I'll bring in, a whoosh or something, and then I work based off of what I hear and what I think sounds good. And it's a lot of just experimentation and trying stuff. And you
But
kind of got to.
what I notice is like you're using some sounds that aren't necessarily true to that space.
Right.
You know?
Right. Those are just additives. Um, I think one of the first things that I do is I'll do Foley. So, Foley is essentially just the sounds that you would hear in a natural environment. So if I were to take a video of a bird, I might hear chirping, I might hear the hiss of the city in the background. I might hear, I might hear a raven in the distance or something. And so I'll go through and I'll analyze, okay, what exactly would I hear and what could I hear in this scenario? So whether it's birds chirping, or it's and specifically in terms of that video, whether it's an engine, revving, or whether it's, someone screaming, or, the hiss of like that the camera makes. And I sort of go through and I analyze my, Foley, and I'll add sounds based on what I would think I would hear, and then I'll go in and add, whether it's the atmospheres, or I'll go in and add the whooshes and like the risers and the falls, and it's all just really experimentation. But I think um, being just open-minded with it and just trying out different things is super important. And it sort of goes back to the taste thing. Like, you sort of have to have an understanding and a taste for it, and you have to know that, all right, does this sound actually work here? Or is it better in this, this section of the video, or should I just take it out as a whole? And you just sort of experiment until you come upon a sound that you like. And it's a lot of just layering too. Like, a lot of my process is just stacking different sounds on top of one another, and just coming up with this entirely new sound based off of a whole host of different sound effects that I would use. So
I just have one question on my end to wrap up before Will kind of caps this off. In terms of if you had to look back 2 years ago, because like Will said, I think one of the things that really stood out between where you started to where you are now is definitely the sound design. So if you were to kind of look back 1 or 2 years ago and you could only give yourself one piece of advice to really, acquire that taste and get kind of generative, I think the process that you just walked us through was really starting with one sound and then building a whole environment around that.
right.
If you were to give yourself kind of one tip to get from where you were kind of with sports before you really dove into sound design to where you are now, like what would that conversation look like?
I think if I were to give myself, some advice, it would probably be something along the lines of just create, regardless of your scenario, regardless of what you are creating, you should always strive to do the best at it and to just make stuff regardless. Because I had always this, and you said 1 to 2 years ago, and I think that's definitely relevant for that point. But I had always had this stipulation: oh, when I get, the opportunity, I'll start making stuff. But a lot of what this industry is about, and a lot of what anything in life is about, is creating your own opportunities. And regardless of anything, I think now more than ever, there's no reason not to go out, take a DSLR, shoot a video. There's just no reason, because you have every resource at your disposal. And if you have the determination, if you have the will, you'll make things happen. And it goes back to the sports content piece, where putting out stuff is one of the most important things that you can do. Just putting out work, regardless of if it fits your aesthetic or if it fits like what you make. I think if you continually just make stuff, your aesthetic, your look, what you want to make will eventually manifest itself. And I think that was one thing that I was super keen on, is just put out stuff no matter what, and continually work on something every single day. Um, I think for the last 3 months, I've probably edited literally every single day, at least, for an hour. And it's that 10,000 hour rule, where you put in those hours, and you're confident in your abilities, and you just continually work on your craft, whether it's, learning about cinematography, whether it's learning about composition, going out and taking a photo once a day, and learning about composition. It's just developing your craft and continually working on something that will progress you as, whether it's a filmmaker, photographer, whether you're a producer. Like, it does not matter. You should always be continually working on your craft. So I think that's definitely something that I would tell my younger self, is just keep working and keep putting out stuff, and fail. Just don't be afraid to fail, honestly. So
Yeah, it's like a saying we always say, is being consistent is harder than being good.
right.
And also much better than being good. But Blaize, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. If you
Yeah,
want to
thank
maybe,
you. I appreciate it.
do you want to maybe plug your Instagram? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just literally Blaize Fobbe. That's it. But yeah, I appreciate you guys, and I had a really good conversation, and I always appreciate talking shop with people about this kind of stuff. So loved it. Thank you guys so much.
We'll definitely have to have you on again, talk
For
about a
sure.
project that maybe you're really excited by. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely have to do this again.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. All right. Ciao.